Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going on an incredible journey, not just across continents, but back in time. We are following the footsteps of a man whose story was so out there, so filled with unbelievable wonders, that for hundreds of years, people were convinced he made it all up. This, of course, is the story of Marco Polo, and it's a journey that literally redrew the map of the known world.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1295. In Venice, three men show up at a wealthy family's home. They look like strangers, faces baked by the sun, dressed in tattered, foreign-looking clothes. They claim they're the Polo family men, who everyone thought had died decades ago. And nobody, not even their own relatives, recognizes them. That is, until they pull out their knives, slice open the seams of their shabby coats, and a fortune in jewels, diamonds, rubies, sapphires just pours out onto the table. The whole room just goes silent. You see, that one single dramatic moment was the grand finale to a lifetime of adventure, but it was also the beginning of a legend that would completely change everything. And it makes you wonder, right? How on earth did these merchants come back from the edge of the world with a king's ransom? To get that answer, we have to trace their steps all the way back to the beginning.
So our story actually starts at the end of theirs, with that incredible, almost unbelievable return to Venice. It's a scene so wild, so cinematic, you'd swear it was made up.
I mean, think about it. They were gone for 24 years, just swallowed up by the immense, mysterious East. Back in Venice, they were ghosts, just faint memories of men who were probably buried in some forgotten corner of the world. So when they finally show up again, speaking their native tongue with a funny accent and telling these wild tales, well, their story felt like a myth from the very second it started.
To really get how they got that fortune and those stories, we have to rewind. We have to go back in time to a special mission they were given by the single most powerful man on the entire planet.
Okay, so years before Marco's father, Niccolo, and his uncle, Maffeo, two very clever Venetian merchants, had pushed further east than pretty much any European had ever dared. Their journey took them right into the court of a man whose name was already a legend, Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. Now, this wasn't just some local king. This was the emperor of the largest land empire the world had ever seen. And this ruler, surrounded by incredible luxury and learning, was totally fascinated by these two guys from the West. Their stories about Europe, about the Pope, about kings, it was like a window into a whole new world for him.
But to Khan, see, he didn't just want trinkets. He wanted knowledge. He saw a huge opportunity here and gave the Polo brothers this monumental task. He made them his own personal ambassadors to the Pope, and he sent them back with this incredible royal request. Bring me 100 of Europe's smartest men, priests, scientists, thinkers, to come and teach my people. Oh, and one more thing. As a sign of respect, bring back some holy oil from the lamp that burns at Christ's tomb in Jerusalem.
So, the brothers set off again, heading back east towards the rising sun, only this time they weren't traveling alone. With them was Niccolo's son, Marco, who was just 17 years old. He was leaving behind everything he'd ever known, stepping right into the pages of what would become one of the most famous and important journeys in all of human history.
And this was no weekend trip. For 3 solid years, the road was their life. Can you even imagine the grit that took? They crossed the deadly snow-covered Pamir Mountains, what they called the roof of the world. They survived the vast, soul-crushing emptiness of the Gobi Desert, where there's nothing but scorching sun and an eerie silence. I mean, every single day was a fight against the elements, against bandits, against just giving up hope. All to reach the Khan's legendary city.
But they had something that made it all possible, a passport more powerful than anything we have today. The Khan had given them a golden tablet called a paisa. This little object, marked with the Khan's authority, was basically their key to the entire continent. It was a command. Anywhere they went inside this massive empire, people had to obey it. That meant they always had fresh horses, they were given food and a place to sleep, and they had armed guards to protect them. This small piece of gold was the ultimate symbol of the Khan's incredible, far-reaching power.
And when they finally got there, after those 3 grueling years, the world they stepped into was beyond anything they could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a bit different from Venice. It was like a whole other reality. A world so grand, so organized, so advanced, it must have felt like landing on another planet.
The Khan, who was older now and a fantastic judge of people, took a real shine to young Marco. The kid was smart, he was observant, and he remembered everything. He wasn't just some merchant's son. The Khan saw him as a fresh pair of eyes, so he started sending Marco on official business to the farthest corners of his empire. He wasn't just a messenger, he was the Khan's personal observer.
Marco basically became the Khan's window to his own kingdom, traveling to places no European had ever laid eyes on and reporting back every single detail.
And the way Marco describes the emperor, it just shatters every European stereotype of the Mongols. This wasn't some wild barbarian. Marco paints this picture of a dignified, majestic ruler. He says his skin was fair and vermeil like the rose. It's almost poetic. This was a man of immense culture and power, not just a conqueror.
So one of the first things that absolutely blew Marco's mind was something totally normal there, but completely alien to a European: money made out of paper. Seriously, think about it. In Europe, wealth was heavy coins, gold, silver. But here, the Khan had figured out a kind of magic. As Marco explains it, they would take the inner bark from mulberry trees, pound it into a kind of black paper, and then cut it into different sized rectangles for different values. The final crucial step? Stamping it with the Khan's own seal in bright red ink. If you refused to accept that as payment, the penalty was death. He was running a whole massive economy on paper, a concept Europe wouldn't get for another 400 years.
And how do you even run an empire that big? Well, you basically invent the internet of the 13th century. Marco was just in awe of the Khan's messenger system. Get this, a network of post houses, fully staffed, set up every 25 miles along every major road. With a fleet of over 300,000 horses constantly on rotation, a royal messenger could ride at a dead sprint day and night and cover up to 300 miles in a single day. News and orders moved at a speed that must have seemed like sorcery to a European. But maybe the most shocking thing for Marco, coming from a Europe obsessed with crusades and religious purity, was the Khan's view on religion. It was so pragmatic and, frankly, so modern. Marco actually quotes the Khan, saying he honors the prophets of all the major religions: Christians, Muslims, Jews, and idolaters. And his reasoning? Well, he said he'd pray to whichever one of them turned out to be the most powerful in heaven. In an age of holy war, the most powerful ruler on earth was basically hedging his spiritual bets.
And this table right here just shows so brilliantly how the Khan's power structure worked. It was all about a clear, visual hierarchy. Your rank wasn't just a title, it was a physical thing you carried. Look at this. A commander of 100 soldiers got a tablet of silver. 1,000, you get solid gold. But the real top brass, the commanders of 100,000 troops, they got a golden tablet with a lion on it, and that gave them the amazing privilege of having a golden umbrella carried over their head wherever they went. It was a constant, public display of their status.
The sheer jaw-dropping scale of wealth was just something a Venetian merchant couldn't even process. Marco talks about the New Year's festival, which was just this insane spectacle of power. On that one day, subjects from all over the empire would bring the Khan gifts, and the grand total? Over 100,000 pure white horses, perfect specimens. Not for his army, just as a tribute. A city's worth of beautiful animals, all for one man.
For 17 long years, the Polos lived in this world of wonders. They served the Khan, they got incredibly rich. But home, that distant memory of Venice, was still calling. They finally got his permission to leave and started the long, dangerous trip back. But Marco's greatest adventure, the one that would make him immortal, hadn't even happened yet.
You know, the irony is just unbelievable. After surviving the deserts of Persia, the pirates of the South China Sea, and the cutthroat politics of the Khan's court, Marco Polo's journey ends in the most boring way you can imagine. Back in Italy during some petty sea battle between Venice and Genoa, he gets captured and tossed into a damp, miserable prison cell. But it was right there, in that prison, that history took a turn. His cellmate just happened to be a writer, a guy named Rustichello of Pisa. And to pass the time, Marco started talking, and Rustichello started writing. He dictated the entire epic story of his 24 years away from home. And the result was a treasure far more valuable than all those jewels. A book. A book that would change the world, get copied by hand, and eventually end up in the personal library of another dreamer named Christopher Columbus, who filled his copy with notes, dreaming of finding the lands Marco described. The book opened with this incredibly bold claim. I mean, it's so audacious, it's almost funny. It basically says that no man, since the creation of Adam, had ever seen as much of the world or witnessed as many great wonders as this Marco Polo. He wasn't just telling a travel story. He was claiming to be the greatest explorer who ever lived.
And yet, for centuries, a lot of people just didn't buy it. His stories of paper money, of black rocks that burned like logs, of cities with thousands of bridges. It was all so fantastical that they gave his book a nickname, Il Milione, The Million Lies. And that leaves us with one last really fascinating question. What if the biggest lie was thinking he made it all up? What if the greatest wonder of all was that it was all true?